Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I hope that all of you are fine. My dear students, the next author that we are going to study is Albert Camus. Previously, we've been through Franz Kafka and his novella called The Metamorphosis. Franz Kafka wrote down in the early part of 20th century, the time of turmoil, the time of tragedy, the time of World War One to be more precise. And by the time I had taught you Franz Kafka, I had introduced to you all the concept of absurd. I had told you that the concept of absurd actually comes from Albert Camus. In this way, Franz Kafka is sometimes referred as to be the precursor of absurdism. As you went through the character of Gregor Samsa, you came across the absurdity of human existence. One night, having been through the dreadful and nightmarish dreams, when he woke up, he turned out to be, he found himself to be transformed into a big vermin, a big bug, a big insect. It was quite a ludicrous kind of situation, illogical, irrational, unreasonable. And that is why we say that absurd situation was marked by his character. Though the symbolic significance of that character was also discussed by us in a very literary style, and you've already developed the question about the symbolic interpretation, the significance of that character, and many other things that happen in that marvelous wonder, in that great work of art. The times of Albert Camus were not very different from the times of Franz Kafka. Albert Camus wrote down in a time when world was facing another world war, World War II. Albert Camus was born in 1913 and he passed away in a very tragic car accident in the year 1960, just at the age of 46-47, merely 3 years after he received the Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prize in Literature, the highest award that is conferred upon a man or a woman of letters. He was the second youngest ever writer to have received this envious award. The first one, the youngest ever was Rudyard Kipling. He was conferred upon this title of Nobel Prize in Literature in the year 1907, just at the age of 41. While this author was conferred upon, Albert Camus was conferred upon this achievement, this great award, at the age of 44. And the announcement by the committee was made on account of, quote unquote, his important literary production, which, with clear-sighted earnestness, illuminates the problems of the human conscience in our times. You know, every great writer is great because of their depiction, because of their ability to capture the sum and substance, the spirit of their era, because they manage, because of their art, through their art, by dint of their art, to capture, to sum up the spirit of their era in such a way that they stand as to be the representatives, as to be the proponents of their eras. That is why their appeal remains lasting. Their appeal continues to make an impact even beyond their times. They stand as to be synonymous with their eras. And so was the case with this great theorist, a novelist, a dramatist, a journalist, an editor, and a political activist. The most fertile period in which he composed his most renowned works was the decade of 1940s, the decade of World War II. As you know very well, the time span of World War II is around 1939 to 1945. Towards the end of World War II, when atomic bombs were thrown upon Hiroshima and Nagasaki by America, the worst ever humanitarian crisis, the most cruel, the most callous, the most malignant event in the history of mankind. The bombings on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the, the atomic bombings, the nuclear attack. It was unequivocally, very bluntly and outspokenly condemned by Albert Camus at that time, being editor of a newspaper. He had condemned this act. It is a record in the history. The work that is part of our syllabus by this great author, by this great humanist, is The Stranger. It is a story. It is a novel. It is a work of fiction. It was composed in the year 1942, the same year in which he composed his philosophical essay, The Myth of Sisyphus. I have already introduced this work to you all. The Stranger actually was written down in French language. As you know, Albert Camus was born in colonial Africa, where French was the language and French was the order of the day. The Stranger was the English translation of his work originally written in French. The Outsider is another variant. Under the title of The Outsider, the same work was published in the Britain, whereas under the title of The Stranger, it was actually published in the United States. The other works are The Plague, The Myth of Sisyphus, The Fall, and The Rebel. Such great masterpieces, all of these are. I am sharing this file with you all. Please go through the biography of this great writer, the personal struggles, the tuberculosis, and the upheavals at the fronts of family he came across. To discuss his literary career, it is very important that Camus actually separated his work into three cycles, each cycle considered of a novel, an essay, and a play. The first was the cycle of the absurd, consisting of The Stranger, The Myth of Sisyphus, and a play called Caligula. The second cycle was the cycle of the revolt, which included The Plague, The Rebel, and Just the Just Assassins. The third cycle, called as to be the cycle of the love, consisted of Nemesis. Each cycle was actually an examination of a theme with the use of a pagan myth and including biblical motifs. Here you can see the table that contains the three cycles. Please use it to inculcate in your assignments. Now I will briefly discuss the summary of this story, this novella. It is actually in two parts. The first part contains six chapters, whereas the second one contains five chapters. Marsu is the main character. He is the narrator. Marsu, the narrator, is a young man who lives in Algiers. He receives a telegram which informs him about his mother's death. He takes a bus to Miranjo, where his mother had been living in an old person's home. While undertaking the journey, he sleeps almost the entire trip. When he arrives there, he speaks to the director of the home. The director allows Marsu to see his mother, but Marsu finds that her body has already been sealed in the coffin. He declines the caretaker's offer to open the coffin with a with an air of indifference. Here you see that the man, upon the death of his mother, is so indifferent. It is absurd. I want to remind you all the concept of absurd, which actually Albert Camus had introduced in his work The Myth of Sisyphus. Absurd means the meaninglessness of life, and if I stay consistent with the idea presented by Albert Camus, I would say that absurd is something that is born, that takes its birth out of a clash, out of a tussle, out of a confrontation between a man's reason, rationality, and man's ability to try to decode the things around, to try to decipher, to try to understand and comprehend the things going around, the life itself, the life at large. And the universe's hell-bent attitude of not being decoded. On the one hand, man's reason, and on the other hand, the disorder, the chaos, the disorganization, the lawlessness in the universe. When these two things come into contact with one another, what is born? It is absurd. When man is unable to assign the meanings, when man is unable to find out the purpose of life, what man sees eye into eye is called absurd. The aimlessness, the pointlessness, the purposelessness, the directionlessness of life is the absurd. That very night, Marsu keeps vigil over his mother's body. Much to his displeasure, the talkative caretaker stays with him the whole time. Marsu smokes a cigarette, drinks coffee, and dozes off. The man is actually over there to keep a vigil onto the dead body of his mother. And what he is actually doing, he is passing his time puffing the cigarette, drinking coffee, and dozing off. There is no, feeling of uh, attachment. He is showing no remorse, no regret. He is showing no feeling of sadness. He is showing no, uh, you know, emotional response to the death of his mother. The very next morning, before the funeral, he meets with the director again. The director informs it that a specific man named Thomas Perez, an old man who had grown very close to Mersu's mother, will be attending the funeral service. The funeral procession heads for the small local village, but Paris has difficulty keeping up and eventually faints from the heat. Mersu reports that he remembers little of the funeral. That very night, he happily arrives back in Algiers. That very night, he returns back. Indifference, apathy on his part, no emotion, lack of emotion on his part. The next day, Mersu goes to the public beach for a swim. There he runs into Mary Cardona, who has been a typist at the office in which Mersu works as well. The two make a date to see a comedy at the movie theater that evening. It is the very next day to the burial, to the funeral ceremony of his real mother. And what he is doing, he is into a pleasure activity with a lady, and he is in a cinema watching a comedy. After the movie, they spend the night together. When Mersu wakes up, Mary is gone. He stays in bed until noon and then sits on his balcony until evening. He watches the people passing through the street. The next day, which is Monday, Mersu returns to work. He has lunch with his friend Emmanuel and then works all afternoon. While walking upstairs to his apartment that night, Mersu runs into Salamano, an old man who lives in his building and owns a mangy dog. A mangy dog is a dog that suffers from some skin disease. Mersu also runs into his neighbor Raymond Sintes, who is widely rumored to be a pimp. Raymond invites Mersu over for dinner. Over the meal, Raymond recounts how he beat up his mistress after he discovered that she had been cheating on him. As a result, he got into a fight with her brother. Raymond now wants to torment his mistress even more, but he needs Mersu to write a letter to lure his mistress back to him. And Mersu, having no agenda in his life, leading a life at autopilot, and being a practical example of a being in itself, readily agrees and writes the letter that night. Meaning why Mersu has no conscience. He has no motto of his own life. He is not leading his life, he is being led. He is a wayward kind of character. The following Saturday, Mary visits Mersu at his apartment. She asks Mersu if he loves her. Mary is the same girl, Mary Cardona, whom he had met the very day, the day very next to the day when he had the burial ceremony of his mother. Now, the same lady, she asks Mersu if he loves her, and he replies very coldly that it didn't mean anything, quote unquote. You can see lack of emotion, indifference on his part. The absurd of the life he is tackling with absurd in his persona. He has become the practical manifestation of absurd. The two then hear shouting that is coming from Raymond's apartment. They go out into the hall and watch as a policeman arrives. The policeman slaps Raymond and says that he will be summoned to the police station for beating up his mistress. Later, Raymond asks Mersu to testify on his behalf, and Mersu agrees. That night, Raymond runs into Salamano, who laments that his dog has run away. Mary asks Mersu if he wants to marry her. He replies indifferently but says that they can get married if she wants to. So they become engaged. The following Sunday, Mersu, Mary, and Raymond go to a beach house owned by Mason, one of Raymond's friends. They swim happily in the ocean and then have lunch. That afternoon, Mason, Raymond, and Mersu run into two Arabs on the beach, one of whom is the brother of Raymond's mistress. You know, two Arabs, all other people are given a specific name, are called by their names, but these two people, two Arabs. This actually reminds me of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, in which the colonized black people are never given a name, while all other people, the colonizers, they have the names, while the blacks, as if they were the shadows, as if they were the nondescripts, insignificant creatures. So is the case with the Arabs. Here is actually, you can see the theme of colonialism being incorporated into this work. The writer is doing so on a purpose, deliberately. Mersu runs into two Arabs on the beach, one of whom is the brother of Raymond's mistress. As you already know, that Raymond had a tough time with his mistress. He had beaten her as well. Now a fight breaks out between Raymond and one of the two Arabs, who is actually the brother of his mistress. Raymond is stabbed. After tending to his wounds, Raymond returns to the beach with Mersu. They find the Arabs at a spring. Raymond considers shooting them with his gun, but Mersu talks him out of it and takes the gun away. Mersu somehow controls the situation. He holds the revolver from him and somehow manages to control the situation. Later on, however, Mersu returns to the spring to cool off, and for no apparent reason, he shoots Raymond's mistress's brother. Another example of an absurd action. Mersu is arrested and thrown into jail. His lawyer seems disgusted at Mersu's lack of remorse over his crime, and in particular at Mersu's lack of grief at his mother's funeral. Later, Mersu meets with the examining magistrate, who cannot understand Mersu's actions. The magistrate brandishes a crucifix and demands that Mersu put his faith in God. Mersu refuses, insisting that he does not believe in God. Atheism. The magistrate cannot accept Mersu's lack of belief and eventually dubs him Mr. Antichrist. Messiah Antichrist. This is a French word. One day, Mary visits Mersu in prison. She forces herself to smile during the visit, and she expresses hope that Mersu will be acquitted and they will get married. As he awaits his trial, Mersu slowly adapts to the prison. His isolation from nature, women, and cigarettes torments him at first, but he eventually adjusts to living without them, and soon does not even notice their absence. He manages to keep his mind occupied and he sleeps for most of each day. Now you see, he becomes, accustomed to the lifestyle in jail because he is a being in itself. He has no authenticity in his life. He suffers from bad faith. He does not have any destination to arrive at. He is not destined at anything. He is a wayward kind of character, directionless, aimless, pointless, meaningless, is the very personification in the form of Mersu the character. Mersu is taken to the courthouse early on the morning of his trial. Spectators and members of the press fill the courtroom. The people are very curious about this character. That what a strange kind of character he is, and that is why the very name, that is how the title of this novel is justified. The people are very curious to know about this character, that how come could there be a person who has no feeling of sadness at the death of his mother, and who kills a man without any purpose on his mind, with no reason apparently. The subject of the trial quickly shifts away from the murder to a general discussion of Mersu's character and of his reaction to his mother's death in particular. The director and several other people who attended the vigil and the funeral are called to testify, and they all attest To Mersu's lack of grief or tears, Mary reluctantly testifies that the day after his mother's funeral, she and Mersu went on a date and saw a comedic movie. During his summation the following day, the prosecutor calls Mersu a monster and says that his lack of moral feeling threatens all of society. Mersu is found guilty and is sentenced to death by beheading. He is actually declared as to be a threat to the society at large because he doesn't fit in the mold of the society. He is a maladjusted person. He does not belong to this society because he doesn't comply with the rules and regulations set by this society. The awkwardness, the unevenness, the strangeness in his character is taken as to be a threat to the society at large. Mercer returns to prison to await his execution. He struggles to come to terms with his situation and he has trouble accepting the certainty and inevitability of his fate. He imagines escaping and he dreams of filing a successful legal appeal. One day, the chaplain comes to visit against Mersu's wishes. He urges Mersu to renounce his atheism and turn to God, but Mersu refuses. Like the magistrate, the chaplain cannot believe that Mersu does not long for faith and the afterlife. Mersu suddenly becomes enraged, grabs the chaplain, and begins shouting at him. He declares that he is correct in believing in a meaningless, purely physical world. For the first time, for the first time, Mercer truly embraces the idea that human existence holds no greater meaning. He abandons all the hope for the future and accepts, quote unquote, the gentle indifference of the world. This acceptance makes Mersu feel happy. In this way, Mersu is kind of an absurdist hero who has no great hopes from the life itself. And that is why absurdism takes towards nihilism. Nihilism means that come what may, whatsoever you may do, all the efforts accumulated together on your part will actually end into a big zero. All your efforts will end in smoke. This is absurdism. This novella is actually the propagation of the philosophy of absurdism. Thank you very much.